This is Building Lifestyles, a show designed to help everyday Australians create a lifestyle that inspires them using property development strategies. On the show, you'll hear from everyday people changing their lives doing property development. You'll learn from their successes as well as some of the challenges they've faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques that you can use to accelerate your property journey. I'm your host, Amanda McEwen, and I'm the founder of The Rising Star Developer, and I'm really passionate about helping everyday Australians build lifestyle using property development. Welcome back to Building Lifestyles. Get ready to be inspired as we welcome a true entrepreneurial spirit, Kody Thompson, who turned $250 into a multi-million-dollar enterprise in just a few short years. Kody, a serial entrepreneur, began his first design business with just $250, business cards, and an iMac in his spare room. Recognizing the potential for hiring virtual assistants online, he expanded his team to handle tasks by creative contractors found on platforms like UpWork and freelancer.com. In just 2 years, he witnessed exponential growth, transforming annual earnings from under $30,000 to a remarkable $500,000. But Kody didn't stop there. He then founded Lightning Sites, a website development and subscription business, a venture that initially leaned on freelancers, but soon needed a more permanent, sustainable team. This quest led him to the Philippines, where Lightning Sites not only found its new home, but thrived, building over 1,300 websites, scaling to over $3 million in revenue with a profit of $900,000 a year, serving more than 800 clients monthly, which is astronomical. Lightning Sites continued its unprecedented growth, outgrowing office spaces, leading Kody to founding his next venture called WorkPod. WorkPod revolutionizes hiring for Australian businesses by providing access to affordable staff in the Philippines, along with providing facilities designed to support these staff. WorkPod aims to create 10,000 jobs in the next 5 years. Beyond his professional achievements, Kody is a devoted husband and father and the driving force behind Love at Scale, a not-for-profit initiative supporting 250 students in the Philippines. Kody's story is a testament to the power of perseverance and the belief that with a dedication and a heart for others, anything is possible. Join me in welcoming the extraordinary Kody Thompson to Building Lifestyles. Welcome, Kody.
Thank you, Amanda. It's always a bit weird hearing someone recite your story like that. I really appreciate you having me.
My pleasure. It's absolutely extraordinary what you've achieved in such a short period of time. So I think it's good to actually get a reminder of that, because sometimes we get so busy in our lives that we stop to actually reflect upon the amazing things we've done. So hopefully that little intro has made you reflect again.
Thank you. I really appreciate the encouragement.
So Kody, you've built several successful companies like Design Fox, Lightning Sites, and now WorkPod. What initially inspired you to pursue entrepreneurship in these fields?
Yeah, it wasn't something that I spent a lot of time thinking about, to be honest. When I finished school, I was running youth programs for high school students. Unfortunately, when I was growing up in high school, I had a number of friends that committed suicide. And so when I finished school, I went back and started running programs in the high school that I went to. So I immediately finished school and then went back into school working with young people. And then my wife and I ended up becoming the national youth director for a group of churches in Australia. And then I took on a volunteer position on the Gold Coast, and I needed some money to survive. So I started using my skills in Photoshop and graphic design to start Design Fox. So it wasn't like I never intended for it to become a business. It was something that I thought I would do for 12 months until the volunteer position turned into a paid role. But that's not how things worked out. The business took off, and within a few years, I realized that I was making a real impact with what I was doing in the business space. And so I continued on with it. So yeah, it wasn't something that I intended initially.
And your story is amazing, because having started 3 different companies, and I know firsthand the amount of work and dedication and headspace that requires, and to have 3 successful companies, you're obviously very clearly talented at understanding what your market wants and then creating a product that's going to serve them as well. And then the bonus is that you get the financial benefits.
Yeah, look, when I was younger, definitely making money was like it might not have initially been the driver, but certainly once you start making money, it becomes like something that I was working hard to improve the money I was making from the business. It was great to be able to I paid off our home in like 3 years, which just gave my wife that sense of security. So there was definitely some financial motivations initially, if I'm really honest. But as you get more success in business and you've made a fair bit of money already, it becomes less important, I guess, how much money's enough, I guess. And for me, I've got a beautiful family, got a beautiful farm that I live on, I've got some investment properties. And so I feel like I kind of feel already so blessed. I don't kind of feel like I need to go out and make squillions of more dollars. So it does definitely change your perspective once you have already achieved some success, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And the amazing thing, as you would know, when you get rid of your mortgage, that just really gives you that sense of financial security, but it also magnifies the money that you've got coming in, doesn't it? Because no longer is a big chunk of your income going to the bank to cover your mortgage. Suddenly that money stays in your bank account, which then gives you so much more opportunity to be able to channel that money and your energies elsewhere as well.
That's right. And I tend to be fairly risk averse, but once your mortgage is paid off, like you said, that money that comes in, I feel like I can play with it, if that makes sense. Like I can if I really feel like an investment is worth it and I believe in it, I kind of doesn't matter if I'm wrong. So what matters less, I guess, once you've sort of got your own personal security sort of sorted. So that has really business made things even easier because I can bet on myself and invest more money in my companies and things like that to see them grow.
Yeah, that is amazing. So your journey started with a humble investment of $250 and a handful of business cards. Can you just share with the listeners how you started? Because a lot of people think they need to have big amounts of money to start, whether it's business or property, but that's not the case if you know how to use it wisely. So I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah. So obviously I had skills in graphic design. So I sat down and was like, I need to come up with a name. I don't know how I came up with Design Fox. It means absolutely nothing to me in a sense. It was just like two words. They look good next to each other. I could design like a cool fox caricature. So I was like, that was why I came up with the name. So I sat down for all of an hour, designed a logo for myself. When you're designing for yourself, it's a lot easier. You don't have to ask anyone else what they think. So I just kind of knocked out a logo. I registered the business name online, probably $30 or something like that to register the business name. And then I designed some business cards, got them printed. And then I just started to literally go door to door. Bendigo, I grew up in a country city, I guess. 100 to 120,000 people live in central Victorian Bendigo. So I just started going to any small businesses that I could find, knocking on their door, giving them a business card, introducing myself, asking them if I could email them my portfolio. And so I did that like every day. It was pretty humbling, like, because you get probably 90% of people tell you to go away, but you only need 10% or, even a handful of people to say yes. And so that's what happened. A few people said yes. And then the big breakthrough for me happened when I heard a rumor that the marketplace, the Bendigo marketplace, the big shopping center in town, was unhappy with their graphic designer. And so I called the phone number, and it just feels like it was like a God thing, honestly. Like I called their number, and never before has the marketing manager, ever since answered the phone. You always get like one of the receptionists. And if I had got one of the receptionists, they probably would have told me to go away. But the marketing manager, Danielle, picked up the phone, and I was able to get her to agree for me to send her my portfolio. 5 minutes later, after I sent the portfolio, she called me back and she gave me my first job. And then they were probably spending $50,000 to $70,000 a year on design over the next 3 years. They were my biggest customer. And then once they were a customer, I guess it gave me credibility that I didn't have before. As a 21-year-old, no one wanted to give me a chance, but Danielle, I owe her a lot, and the Bendigo Marketplace for giving me that opportunity early, because that really gave me, so many opportunities came out of that.
And that's amazing. And drawing from those parallels, right, from your story around how you started from that $250 and had to make calls and put yourself out there and be consistent. And you say it was luck having the marketing manager answer the phone, but I'm a big believer that the universe plays in certain ways, and that's your prize for the hard work that you've done. And it's not too dissimilar to property development, right? Because when you're first starting out in property, there's a lot of hard work in terms of understanding, firstly learning the process, but then going out there and trying to find the deals and build your feasibility up. That sort of thing takes time. And And I believe there's probably three main characters in being successful in property. One is learning how, two is taking action, and then three is being consistent. So there's so many parallels between business and property that is so important. So it's not necessarily who's the smartest. It's not necessarily who's got the biggest team around them. But if you can keep showing up like you did when you started off your business and like you do in property, it's not a matter of if you'll be successful. It's just a matter of when, if you keep showing up.
I so agree with that, and it's been interesting. I had a conversation with someone that started their business at a similar time to me, and they haven't had the same financial success that we've had in our business. And one of the interesting things I noticed, they actually said it to me. They're like, "You've been doing the same thing for the last 10 years." And I was like, that's why we got these results, and perhaps you didn't. You know, they were close friends, so I could kind of speak to them like that, but they had always changed their business model like over and over again. They never sort of settled on just like delivering a specific product and just delivering it over and over and over again. And I guess doing the boring work, but that's, I guess, where you get really great results, is if you can do the same thing. Like you said, that action done consistently over a long period of time reaps, you know, great benefits.
And that is such a good point. And the conferences that we jointly go to, I remember sitting down with one of the speakers, and she said, a boring business is a great business. And out of all the things that I learned in that conference, it's one thing that really stuck with me. And I thought, hang on a second, that makes so much sense. And I think it made me reflect upon my own development business. And if you look at all of my product that I've created through Analysis Developments, you look at them and they look very similar. So all the specification, I just rinse and repeat. All of my processes, I just keep things so simple. And even the way I teach is so simple. I get some people going, this seems too basic. And it's like, well, there's complexity there, right? But keep the fundamentals simple and keeping on rinsing and repeating. And if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? I think once you simplify things, that just gives you the headspace to be able to then, when complexity arrives, to then have the headspace to be able to deal with that if everything else is simple.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree.
So what strategies did you find that were crucial in scaling your businesses? Because you've grown all of your businesses so fast. So what do you think are the fundamentals that have helped you with that scaling?
You just mentioned a few of them when you were talking about your own business, like having that, that as I guess simplicity is probably the easiest way to explain it. Like, and then probably the other way to explain it would be productizing. Again, you talked about this just a moment ago. You were talking about the product you're producing, the homes that you're producing, keeping them consistent in terms of the plans, probably the materials that are used, the finishes, the fittings, all those things. If you keep those things consistent, it allows you to understand your product really well, like understand how it's built. You can speed up production because you could potentially use the same builder. So all the same things, if you translate that to websites, it's exactly the same principles that we did. We use the same theme, the same plugins, so the same building materials. We use the same process of constructing the website. All of those things are systemized, and then even pricing and quoting. So we sold our websites on a subscription. We had 3 setup options. So again, we limit the options for the customer. We build those products around what we know our customers want to buy. And so we allow them to get a higher quality website at a lesser price, and then they can pay for it with monthly installments rather than having to pay a huge upfront fee. And then also they don't have to worry about the ongoing support of their website. And they don't have to worry about having to build a website like every 2 years, because every 2 years we do a free refresh of their website. So I built the product around what I felt that small business customers wanted. And then I did all the things you talked about: simplify the product, make sure we find ways to make it more efficient. And then I just got, obsessive with that. Like, how do we shorten the speed of the build? How do we add more value to the product without increasing the price? Like, you just keep trying to drive that one product and get it perfect. And then we just did that over 8 years, and that's how we scaled Lightning Sites.
That's incredible. So I guess as a serial entrepreneur, you wear many hats, and a lot of business owners do, especially when you're starting out. How do you manage your time and your priorities across your various roles and your businesses and responsibilities?
We have a great team. So the first part is, I guess, we create what's called an accountability chart in our organization, so we know which leaders are accountable for what. And then a big part of it is building capacity in the people that are around you. So allowing people to take responsibility for their areas and not trying to take that responsibility back. So you pass those responsibilities down to capable people, and you provide, leadership training, support for the people that are helping drive the business forward. So that's the first thing, getting the team right, making sure people know what they're accountable for. And then we set like 90-day action plans. So every 90 days, all of our major leaders in our organization have 5 things on their action plan. And we meet every week for a senior management meeting where we review our numbers, our operational numbers, and we review our 90-day action plan. So if you're focusing on the right things in your business, you can work smarter, not harder. Like, obviously, I do put in big hours when I'm working, but that's because I enjoy what I'm doing. But I don't want to put in hours that are not productive. So we try to make sure that those things that are on our 90-day action plan, excuse me, they're the things that are driving the business forward. So we want to make sure that we're, focusing on the things that are going to take the business where we want to go, not just getting stuck in our email inboxes or getting stuck chasing the next shiny thing. It's all driven by our 90-day action plans.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. And that's very similar philosophy to what I follow as well. And I remember having a conversation with my accountability team as part of my mastermind group. And one of my students was just really struggling to make progress because she was still working and doing development on the side and a family, and was really struggling to feel like she was making progress. When we sat down and looked at her tasks and where she was focusing on, she said, okay, look, I need to work through this content here. I need to do this here and this here. And I said, okay, let's just have a look at those activities you're trying to do, right? How many of those activities are actually going to help you get to where you want to get to? And then she reflected and she said, okay, well, yeah, I'm not actually doing things that are going to turn the needle towards the direction of where you want to go. And I think that's a really key point in any part of your life, whether you're a business owner or a developer or even just life in general, right? I'm a big believer in planning and setting up a year ahead and putting those big rocks in first and finding out what's important to you, both in business and life, and then building your year around those big rocks. And I think we all have the same 24 hours in a day, right? So it's really up to us what we choose to do to be able to make the most of those 24 hours we have.
Yeah, a lot of people try to pack their calendar with more stuff. Like, I think that's the answer that people try to like I've had people show me their calendars before. Now, look how efficient this is. And there's all these blocks in their calendar. And then I'll open up my calendar and there's like 3 phone calls for the week in my calendar. I want to do the opposite. I don't want to have things in my calendar. I want to be able to open up my computer at the start of the day and I want to be thinking about our 12-month plan for the business and what I need to do in the next 90 days to make sure the business achieves those goals. I don't want to have things scheduled in my calendar that are going to stop me from having creative space to think, because one decision that you make, like the decision that I made to sell websites on a subscription. Before that, I was selling websites for a large fee, $15K. And the decision to move to selling websites for like less than $2,000, it was a daunting one, but I'd had creative time to think about it. And I felt like it was the right move. And then it turned out to be probably the best decision I ever made in my business. So if you don't have that creative time to think about the direction of the business and then breaking it down into what you need to do in the next 90 days, if you're just like working, in the delivery of the product, like all day, every day, you're not going to be able to make those good decisions.
Yeah, and that's the same within property as well, right? So whether you're working in a business or working in a job or having a wealth creation strategy on the side, once you actually know what you want to achieve and then can you focus your energies on those right activities. So for example, you know that you want to try and find 5 deals a week to be able to then help you make progress towards finding that deal and then and progressing it along. Those decisions are just so important, which is amazing. So what I'd love to know more about is your work with WorkPod. And I get to do some work with WorkPod as well, so I can give some experience firsthand. But I think it's more than just a business there. Firstly, can you share with listeners what WorkPod is about, but then also share the impact this business is having both locally in Australia and also overseas?
Yeah, so as I was growing Lightning Sites, people started to ask me, like, how did you build a team in the Philippines? Because we had about 80 staff with Lightning Sites in the Philippines. We built our own building. And so people would ask me questions about that. And for a long time, I couldn't really help people because I was so focused on Lightning Sites. But when we ended up finishing our own building, we had 50 spare desks in my office. And I was like, oh, well, those people who've been asking me for help, I'll go back and just help them. So I hired some staff for my friends and put them in my office. And my thought was, if I sell these 50 desks on a subscription, I could get my building for free. So that was my kind of thought capacity. And then once I helped my friends hire, they were over the moon and they wanted to hire more, but now I had no room in my building. So that's how WorkPod started. It was basically like what I wish I had when I started hiring in the Philippines, which is I wanted someone to hire the staff for me. And then I wanted infrastructure. I wanted a building where I could grow my own team. I wanted to be the one to hire them directly because I wanted them to be my team. And so that's what we created with WorkPod. We've got basically what WorkPod does is we help business owners hire staff directly, and then they pay the staff directly. So the staff get paid the way they should. They get paid a good salary. And then we charge our clients a fee for them to work from our office spaces. So it's almost like recruitment merged with co-working space. And then we provide a whole bunch of support around that. So we have like a training site so the staff in the Philippines can access high quality training. We've got software so that our Australian and New Zealand clients can, manage the performance of their team effectively. So that's essentially what WorkPod does. Over the last 2 years, we've placed over 800 staff for our clients. We are aiming to have over 1,000 desks, in fact, 1,200 desks by the end of the year. So that's our goal right now. We have about 600 VAs working from our facility. And so we've created about 800 jobs in the last 2 years. And our goal is to try to create 10,000 jobs in the next 5 years, which we're really passionate about. And in the Philippines, if you hire one person, the government tells you that basically looks after 20 Filipinos. So if we can create jobs for 10,000 people, essentially we'll be supporting over 200,000 people. So something that we're really passionate about.
Yeah, and having staff myself in the Philippines and knowing the impact that it has on their lives and their families. And you're right, I can see firsthand how the amount of money you pay them, how that does really support all of their family, and they live very, very different lifestyles to what we do. But I think as a small business owner, what I've been amazed about is just the affordability to be able to have a full-time staff member at such a low cost to be able to help me grow my business and do the tasks that are more task orientated. And this, of course, there's all different types of roles. We can cover that shortly. But I've found it's taken a huge weight off my shoulders to be able to just pass tasks over to my team to be able to support me and help me grow my business so that I've got the capacity to focus on what I do best. Because I couldn't really, to then hire those staff locally, it would have such a lot more pressure, especially in a startup business, to be able to try and generate the revenue to support that. So it almost just enables you to be able to grow your business faster in a safer way without having this huge headcount. That doesn't mean I still use a lot of local staff as well, more on a contractor basis, but it just means that I've got a much affordable cost base to be able to help me grow my business. And then as that grows, then I'll have my staff locally too. So I think that's really important. And another challenge that I had is I do have one assistant who works from home and then one assistant who works within WorkPod. And in the nature of the Philippines, there's crazy weather and blackouts and internet goes down. And so what I have found by having that infrastructure there has really provided some stability in terms of them being able to work. But also, given that there's only one of them, to be able to be part of a community as well is a really great thing too. So I've been the beneficiary of seeing firsthand the impact of what you create and enables for business owners, but also enables for the staff working over there as well. So I'm very grateful for what you provide.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned something interesting too about just the dynamic between scaling your local team and the Philippines team. And I think that's something that I think people who haven't outsourced before might not have experienced. Like, I guess one of the concerns people have about hiring staff overseas is the concern of losing jobs for Australians. But what I've seen firsthand from our clients is if you scale your offshore team and get those repeatable, perhaps lower value tasks off the plate of your local staff here in Australia, it actually allows you to hire more Australians. So it's really interesting. Like you said, because a Filipino staff member full-time might cost sort of between 16,000 Australian and 20,000 Australian a year, you can hire those types of roles to scale like your back-end tasks. And that will allow you to hire, I guess, more expensive Australian staff to take on more important roles within the business. So all of our clients, it's amazing, once they start to embrace outsourcing and they take these lower value tasks off their local teams, their local teams tend to grow. So it's not like a case of hiring people in the Philippines reduces opportunities in Australia. It's actually like it's like the faster you scale, the more opportunities it creates in both places, the Philippines and Australia. So really everybody wins in that scenario.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So given where we do property development in this podcast and in our community, you've been developing office space in the Philippines. I'd love to hear some of your stories, some of your challenges that you've experienced and how you've overcome them doing property development in a completely foreign country.
Well, I've spent way too much money, certainly in projects. I had no experience building these types of facilities. For the listeners to get an idea, some of our facilities, like our current facility we're doing at the moment, has 900 desks in it. So I should know the floor meterage off the top of my head, but I don't. But it's a large building, fits 900 staff working in it. The cost for this particular project is around $2 million, and you can't really borrow money very easily. So we've paid for this in cash. So it's been a challenging project in that respect. It's hard to get money and deploy it overseas. We're working with banking partners at the moment to try to make it easier for future developments. But that's been one challenge, Amanda, is just figuring out the funding. What we're doing is not normal. And so banks kind of look at us and we don't fit in any of their boxes. And they're like, this really doesn't fit our risk profile. And then we've got lots of private investors that would throw money at us, but we don't want to give away equity. So that's been one challenge. I'm sure that would be a challenge that a lot of your listeners would have had, just sourcing funding. And, even if the deal that they're working on is going to be good, you got to get the money to make it happen. So that's been one challenge. Probably just my lack of experience in I have no experience in commercial, developments prior to WorkPod. I've done three major developments now in the Philippines, probably around $3 million worth of developments there. The largest one is the one that I mentioned that we're doing at the moment. So yeah, I get the learning curve's been steep. The budgets have always been less than the money that we needed. We've gone over budget, but we've improved that every time we've done a development. The first development, I think I doubled the budget that I had, and I was like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. And then every time I've got more help, and this time we've still gone over budget, but it hasn't been, anywhere like the first project that I did.
But fortunately, you've got the business model that this is going to be sustainable over the time, given you've got a revenue stream coming in. So it's certainly and it always hurts when you go over budget, but at least you've got the funding coming through to help support it. It's just
exactly
ROI.
Exactly, yeah.
And what about actually building it on the ground, using the trades and the materials locally? I'd love to hear more about that. How you've managed that side of things.
Yeah, so we have a building contractor who works with us on all of our projects. He does a great job for the most part. Probably one of the challenges is just QA. I imagine this is probably a challenge. I hope it is a challenge for everyone, because it's certainly been a challenge for us, is just picking up all of the small details. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and that's been challenging being in another country, not being able to just check the finishing of things, like how the finishing in the bathrooms and the finishing of just like small things like the plastering, the ceiling tiles on the roof. Like, is the ceiling perfectly flat when you look at it? Or, especially we've got long corridors, and when you look down the ceiling all the way down the corridor, is the finish done well? And those little things have been somewhat challenging. I feel like in the Philippines, the quality expectations in that is probably lower than what we would expect in Australia. But because of the nature of our business, when our clients go visit the Philippines, we want them to be blown away by our facility. So it's not okay to be like, oh, this is good enough for Philippines type thing. Like, we need it to be like, we want people to be blown away when they come to our spaces. So that's been, somewhat challenging, but over time, I've got my staff to start to see those details a little bit more. And our building contractor, the more we've worked with them, they know what I'm not going to be happy with. So they've improved their quality, for us as well. So, but yeah, that's probably been the biggest challenge. In terms of materials, it's probably very similar costs to Australia. Like, to get timber, glass, steel, costs pretty much are the same. Air conditioning is expensive. Cabling, doing all the cabling for 900 workstations. That's probably where the first time I did that was where I blew the budget out, was on IT. I'd budgeted for the build pretty well, and then I got the IT quotes in and was like, holy crap, to put servers in and cable everything to all of the desks. So all that stuff's pretty similar cost-wise to Australia. The difference is the labor costs are lower, obviously, in the Philippines. So, getting getting the actual trades is costs less, but the actual materials cost the same. So I guess if that, I'd say, and in terms of labor costs, just for a property developer's understanding, it's probably like, I'd say like a fourth or a fifth of the price. So if you took any sort of development in Australia, you looked at the cost of materials, it's probably going to be the same. And then if you look at the cost of the labor, if you divided that by 4 or 5, you probably get a fairly accurate understanding of what it's like to develop a property in the Philippines.
Well, that's really interesting that especially that the cost of materials is similar to Australia, because I guess it depends where the source is coming from, and I guess the tariffs and the landing costs and all that sort of stuff, if they're coming directly from Asia or whether, that's fascinating actually.
I think maybe concrete might be the only thing that I've found over there that's been maybe cheaper than what we would get it here in Australia, but it depends. I mean, where I live, northern New South Wales, we have a massive concrete quarry right near us. So concrete here is probably cheaper than if we buy it directly from the quarry. So it really depends, like you said, where the supply lines for this stuff is coming from. But yeah, definitely, I think building materials everywhere has just skyrocketed. Like we did the first level of this property development project for 600,000 or 650,000, and then only 2 years later, the second floor for the same amount of space, same amount of desks, is over $1 million. So the price of production just in the last 2 years, has been, we've certainly felt it.
Yeah, and that's been a common theme all around the world, and certainly I've noticed that with my projects too. So yeah, but fortunately we've had the upside of the property values going up too, so it balances itself out. But it's been an interesting journey the last couple of years. Can you just share with listeners what skills and talent Australian businesses can access by using outsourced providers such as WorkPod, and how to manage international teams? Because I think the breadth of skills that we have available to us is unknown unless you've got alliances like we do, where you can understand how you can use this type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the basic stuff like any administration tasks, any task that can be done online, so executive assistant, personal assistant, admin type roles, but then things like bookkeeping, accounting, video editing. We've got teams that got people who run podcasts that have got like audio engineers, graphic designers, CAD drawers. We've placed staff for architect firms, so that we've hired architects for a couple of Sydney architecture firms. We've hired lawyers to work as paralegals for legal firms. So there is the basic stuff, and then there's like any sort of specialist stuff, as long as the work can be done remotely, basically, and it can be outsourced. We currently work with about 80 medical clinics through one of my other companies called GP Hero. We work with medical clinics here in Australia. We have about 80 clinics that we work with. Mostly they use them as virtual receptionists. A typical general practice in Australia will receive like over 500 phone calls a day. And so these staff answer the phones for the medical clinic so that the local receptionists can actually smile at the patients when they come in the door and talk to them, instead of trying to juggle phone calls, admin, and talk to the patient at the same time. So yeah, there's a huge breadth of roles. It just comes down to being able to also have some training to upskill the staff. Like for example, the lawyers I mentioned before, they can get laws different in the Philippines, but their skill set, they have the skill set to work as a paralegal for an Australian firm, but then they need the upskilling. And so that particular law firm's doing really well. They've got like a number of staff with us, and these paralegals draft a lot of contracts up. They do conveyancing contracts for property. They do shareholders agreements, they do corporate and property law stuff, and they produce contracts. And then the Australian lawyers are the ones who finish it all off and check it all. So yeah, there's a huge breadth of roles that we can help place at WorkPod.
Yeah, and I even think about my team. So I have my bookkeepers are offshore, which are amazing. And my team, I get them to do things like they do like graphic design, they create set operating procedures, they help build landing pages, they edit my podcast, so they'll be doing the editing of this after we finish. I've even got one of my team members who helps me support my customers as well, to make sure we can deliver an incredible experience from a student perspective. And she's now also helping me find deals as well. So I've given her my tools as to what I do when I'm looking for deals, so she can help fast track that side of things as well. So I think anything that you can create a procedure for, and I think a mentor of ours, Dale Beaumont, one thing that he said, if you're doing it twice, then systemize and get somebody else to do it for you. And that's something that I always think, okay, if I'm doing something more than once, how can I put it into a system and then hand it off to give me more time? So yeah, I've just been amazed with the amount of tasks that I can get off my shoulders and across to somebody else. And one thing that I've also been really grateful for is just their work attitude and their gratefulness, their ability, their passion to serve you, and their attitude and their hardworking. And yes, they're just an absolute pleasure to be part of my team. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so one last question before we head off. So can you provide the listeners with one tip they can take away from today that they can implement right away in their business or life?
We talked about simplifying before, and I think simplifying your business model, that was the critical decision that I made with going from Design Fox, where I was selling time for money as a graphic designer, to scaling Lightning Sites. It was about creating a product, productizing. There's a lot of ways you can build websites, and I could have kept selling time for money, but instead we simplified the model. We gave clients 3 options to buy the website set up. We sold it on a subscription. So we simplified our model. That allowed us to get rid of all of our other products. We talked about building systems. If you've got loads of products, then you're going to have loads of systems. Whereas if you've got one product or a small number of products, then you only need a small number of systems. So you can spend your time to really dial those in. So I'd encourage listeners to simplify, productize, and then try to find ways you can earn recurring revenue as well. I think, just to throw a few things in there in my one tip, that was the thing that really made a difference for Lightning Sites.
Thank you so much for listening. This is Building Lifestyles, a show designed to help everyday Australians create a lifestyle that inspires them using property development strategies. This podcast was produced by the Rising Star Developer. We've been helping Australians realise their financial and lifestyle goals since 2020. We play a pivotal role in educating, supporting and celebrating the goals and successes of our students and our community. To find out how we can help you realise your property, wealth and lifestyle goals, head to our website www.risingstardeveloper.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of Building Lifestyles, be sure to subscribe to and follow the show in your favourite podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review, as it really helps others find the show. I'm Amanda McEwen, and we'll be back next episode with more tips on how you can build your lifestyle.